Mario has obviously had his fair share of sports-based games, and has even gone to the Olympics, but when you break down all of the sports and the sheer amount he's played, does this make Mario the most versatile athlete out there? The other day I picked up a classic for the GameCube, Super Mario Strikers, and as I was playing, one thing kept coming to mind. Dang, Mario is good. His agility across the field, the power going for the goal. Then I was like, no wonder he's so good at track and field, baseball, rugby, swimming, skiing, tennis, rowing, figure skating. Wait, how many sports has Mario actually played? Of course there are the main titles like Strikers, for example, and of course Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, which the latest game has like 24 events. And guys, buckle up, because Mario, I think, puts all of your sports heroes to shame. But as always, thank you for watching. My channel actually got hacked recently, and YouTube hasn't been very friendly with showing my content, so make sure to like and subscribe because it all adds up. And this is actually a new office space. It's a bit of a mess right now, but I will definitely do an office tour as soon as I have it cleaned up. But now let's take a closer look at our ultimate athlete. Mario is multifaceted, having been a successful plumber and doctor. And of course, he's also saved the Mushroom Kingdom a few times. And he's a short king, coming in at around 5'1" and 185 pounds. And to start off, it might be easier for us to get the main sports titles out of the way. And the very first sports game was all the way back in 1983 with baseball. Now there are two other Mario-based baseball games, Mario Superstar Baseball and Mario Super Sluggers, but we are encompassing all of the sports themselves, not necessarily the games. So these three games will count as one sport. I also want to say that it probably would have taken me months to play all the games that I'm going to mention today, so I rather opted to pull some previously recorded gameplay from some other gameplay creators. I'll have all their info in the description, so definitely check them out. And I also wanted to thank them personally for what they do. But let's list off some of the main title sports games, like tennis, which encompasses 8 main title games, golf, which has 6 games, soccer, which has 3 games, and basketball, which surprisingly only has 1 dedicated game for the DS. And so far, this seems pretty easy and brings our total sport count up to 5. But things are about to get a lot more complicated, because we are about to take a look now at the Olympic Games. And before we get into it, I know that you could probably count other characters in these categories too, but it's Mario's name on everything, you know? Plus he's just been in more actual games than all the other characters have. But here's where things get tricky, because there are a lot of events in these games, but we're kind of dumbing it down to the broader category. So things like swimming and diving would be considered different sports, and I'll also differentiate some of the track and field sports, but like a 100-meter backstroke versus a 100-meter breaststroke will just be considered as swimming. Though I will note all the variations of the events towards the end once we have the full list. Not trying to offend any sports, just trying not to overcomplicate it. And each Olympic game title kind of keeps adding and switching out events, so we'll kind of have to go game by game for this one. So the first, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games for the Wii and DS. It has a fair amount on here, with us being able to cross off some of the main Olympic sports like track, several different field events, which I'll gather those across all the Olympic titles as we go, because I just want a chance to assess them each individually. Then there's swimming, diving, a couple gymnastics events, which I will also list out at the end, and quite the array of others, so stay with me here. Boxing, cycling, canoeing, archery, fencing, shooting, and of course he's also mastered the classic table tennis. Though we already have our first repeat sport here with basketball, but hey, I guess he was just so good at basketball that he made it to the Olympics too. But that covers our first Olympic game title, which brings our total sports count up to 16. Now we are going to continue looking at the Olympic Games, but rather than going in the order that they release, we are going to split them off into summer games and winter games. Because yes, Mario goes to both and competes in every event. We're just going to have a lot of repeats, so I'd rather wrap up the summer games before we head into the winter games. So continuing on to Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games. And they must have found their footing, because goddamn, there are so many events in this one. Like, we've already added track and field, but here several more events can be added to his skill set, including the marathon and race walk, which I think I knew that was a thing, but it's still a rather unbelievable sport to me. Swimming adds in more events, including synchronized swimming, which that is something every person needs to witness, as seeing Mario and team perform in that. Gymnastics added in several events, such as the floor exercise, which is another Mario must-see. And we also see the addition of 3 more fighting events in judo, taekwondo, and wrestling. There's also a lot more boating events, including sailing, rowing, and kayaking, and then filling in the rest with equestrian, beach volleyball, which guys, as much as I want to, I don't think I can count volleyball and beach volleyball as 2 separate sports. Badminton, handball, field hockey, water polo, triathlon, and pentathlon. Though I'm also not really adding these as they just encompass other sports. And at this point, before we enter the other 2 Summer Olympic Games, I am logging Mario as having professionally competed in 30 different sports. And this still excludes the field sports, which like I said, I'll log at the end. But before we come back to that, let's move on to Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games, which actually doesn't really have as many events as the other 2, but we were able to add BMX, which was actually in the 2012 game, but I had roped it into the general cycling category until now. And we are also able to add rugby here, which I feel like I could totally see Mario actually playing. And then taking a look at the most recent Olympic game title with Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. And you know, I haven't really talked about the games much themselves so far, but in this one, there's a really cool feature where you have game options to play in a more retro style to symbolize the 1964 Tokyo Games. But surprisingly, we're still able to add a few more sports to Mario's athletic list, with sport climbing, which is an absolutely insane sport to watch. We can also add surfing and skateboarding, and another fighting style with karate, bringing our total sport count to 36. But now adding in the field events like the different types of jumping and throwing brings that number up to 43. And now we essentially have to do this whole thing over again, but with the Winter Games. So lucky for us, there are actually only 2 game titles to look at, and I am so ready to add a ton more games to this list, because it's kind of getting me hyped for like a Mario versus the World Olympic Games. Starting it off with alpine skiing and ski jumping, then there's skiing moguls, which is different than alpine skiing, and we are also adding ski cross. Lots of skiing events, but all very different from one another, therefore all being added to Mario's list. We also have snowboard cross and the half pipe, speed skating, figure skating, bobsled, skeleton. You know, no hate to the Winter Games, but I feel like we change something slightly and it becomes an entirely different sport. And finishing off the sports with ice hockey and curling. Now that's a sport I can get behind. And then the DS version adds a couple more with biathlon and luge. It's also worth mentioning that all these games have these dream events, which are more or less battle type versions of the Olympic Games. But mainly the reason I mention this is that in this version of the game, there's a dream event called Snowball Fight, which I totally think should be a real Olympic event. And while I would move us on to our last Mario and Sonic Olympic game, the events in the Sochi 2024 Olympics are nearly identical to the previous one. It does add in a couple of events within the broader categories, but none different enough to be able to add them as a different sport for Mario. But after all of this, we have a total of 57 sports that Mario has participated in. Mamma mia! But wait, there's more. Just a couple last minute additions here, as if Mario hasn't done enough already. But there are 2 other sports themed games, Mario Sports Mix for the Wii, and Mario Sports Superstars for the 3DS. Though, as I'm sure you could imagine, we've covered most of them, but in Sports Mix, Mario also participated in dodgeball, and while Mario did also compete in equestrian and the Olympic Games, in Sports Superstars, he competes in horse racing, and in my opinion, a completely different sport here. Then there are a couple more obvious ones, like the Mario Karts and Super Smash Brothers, which for those, I am easily adding racing to the list, and I guess like MMA fighting. And then one more obvious one that I think makes the cut is breakdancing, as seen in Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix. And if you haven't seen professional breakdancing, I highly recommend you check it out. And this brings our final tally of sporting events that Mario has played to 62. Seriously, a master athlete. And I'm not talking one and done. I'm talking multiple Olympic Games, several professional game titles, and no one has really been able to come close to this number, because I actually did a little dive on multi-sport athletes, and there are 3 people that we generally consider to be the best multi-sports athletes out there. The first one being Bo Jackson, who won the Heisman Trophy and played in the NFL for 4 years and the MLB for 8 years. Then there's Jim Thorpe, who is an Olympic gold medalist in pentathlon and decathlon, and also spent 6 years in the MLB, and is in the College and Professional Football Hall of Fame. And then there's Babe Didrikson Zaharias, who won 10 majors and is in the Golf Hall of Fame, and also received 3 Olympic gold medals in track and field. Obviously, all of them have impressive resumes, but I think might have a little trouble stacking up against the Mushroom Kingdom savior himself. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you're curious, on screen right now are all the sports and events that Mario has participated in, but let me know in the comments if there are any more that I missed. And it also just so happens that this video is coming out around the 2024 Olympic Games, so I hope you're able to catch some of the events and picture Mario taking down some of the best of the best. But again, thank you for watching, I appreciate y'all.
I'll do it. Have a rotten day.